Undermining the false concept of a state. The whole talk should be nothing more than, well, how do we show that the state isn't real, or there is no state, or that government is illegitimate? I should only have to get up here and just say, well, the means are not consistent with the end. Good night. And that should be all I have to say. Right? But unfortunately, we have a lot of conditioning and whatnot. Because how many people went to public school? When did they start teaching citizenship? Did they actually ever teach you in school what a citizen was? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? But they never actually get into the concept that it's so important about what a citizen is in states, and they tell you about the states and the revolution, and they had this, and the colonies went to states, and they did all this. But did they ever tell you what a state really was? Anyone? Well, that's like we were talking about the indirect teaching. They don't teach you what it is. They teach you what to do. One thing you can do, what I'm going to do is show you, is that unlike with the religious aspect, I'm going to use empirical evidence and absolutely prove beyond all doubt whatsoever, that there's no such thing as a citizen or a state. And it doesn't even take that long. All it is, like I say on the book, it's public relations to keep you paying taxes. That's all it is. To keep you in line. It's like what those ants outnumber us, at least 100 to 1. And if they ever figure it out, there goes our way of life. It's not about the food. It's about keeping you ants in line. As long as you think that you're a citizen or resident of a non-existent state, you're going to continue paying taxes. Right? Pretty much. So let's deconstruct that. The state, let's use since I'm from Arizona, it's a little easier. So let's look at what it is. Is the state, let's see, state of Arizona, was there a state of Arizona prior to February of 1912? What? Just shout them out if you know them. We're informal here, guys. I don't wear a tie. So the answer is no, right? Was the land of Arizona there? Yeah. So is Arizona different from the state of Arizona? Heck yes. I've even had a federal judge, not a federal judge, she was a municipal judge, Paula Burgess. You can look her up online. She still is a pro tem judge in Mesa. She told the truth when it came to the state. Very rare. But they get so frustrated with me questioning it that they had to do something. We've had 5 proceedings with this idiot already. We don't want to get into this. So right at the very beginning, I'm taking judicial notice that the state of Arizona is an act of Congress. Wow. Well, yeah. Does everyone believe that? Who didn't believe it? Why don't you believe that?
Well, there must have been some convention in Arizona to approve statehood and then go to Congress.
No, actually, he was correct. The state of Arizona is an act of Congress signed by the president. It's a piece of paper. So I said, oh, great. We don't need a trial unless you can tell me that you have a witness to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I was within that act of Congress on this day. All right, so let's get back. All right, let's look at it from a legal standpoint and see if we can see if there's any evidence. We know it's an act of Congress. Let's look at what a citizen is supposed to be. Something they didn't teach you in any of these schools. And I'm going to pick on David Beto is here, a citizen. And I'm not pulling this out of thin air. It's Loria versus United States. I don't know the actual citation, but it's in the book. I thought maybe you'd have it. Anyway, it's Loria versus United States. It's the United States Supreme Court. And they define a citizen legally as a member of the body politic owing a duty of allegiance in return for a duty of protection. These are reciprocal obligations, one a consideration for the other. Has anyone ever heard that before? You guys have read the book at midnight readings. Good Lord. Are you reading the book, people? Okay, let's break that down just a little bit. Okay? Now, is anyone familiar with this relationship between allegiance and protection? Does this sound familiar to anybody? Someone... Say it again? Yes. It's a fealty. It's an oath of fealty. It's an oath of allegiance. You know, when someone gets naturalized, what do they have to do? They have to put the hand to the square and swear An oath of allegiance. So it's the old English common law thing that allegiance draws with it protection, protection draws with it allegiance. Right? Now, we'll go through, I want to go through, so legally there's no citizen, and just morally or economically there are no citizens. How did the duty of allegiance and the duty of protection arise? Well, let's look at it. Are taxes compulsory or are they voluntary? Compulsory. So, could someone really have a duty to protect you if it's compulsory? Someone said Al Capone before, right? So, if Al Capone was getting protection money from Speakeasy, was he obligated to protect them? What? Yeah, well, wow, if you... Well, of course not. It's all by violence. It's all compulsory. That's why I mentioned before, all I should have to say is, well, the means are not consistent with the end. Because like I say on the show, if they were really looking to protect your life, liberty, and property, they wouldn't be the first ones threatening to take it, right? But that's what they do. Well, pay us or we'll kill you. So there couldn't be of a duty to protect, even legally or even economically. Well, let's look at it legally. Legally, does the government have any duty to protect anybody in the state? Just shout it out. No. How do we know this? Supreme Courts? Is it just one Supreme Court that said that?
No, it's several.
Every Supreme Court has said that. Is it just the United States? No. I have Canadian citations, English, Australia, and New Zealand. It's all the same thing. Because if they had a duty to protect you, now let's look at LA for example. If they had a duty to protect you, wouldn't that be actionable when they didn't, and your car was stolen, or your house was broken into, or someone breaks into your car this afternoon and takes your iPod? It would be actionable. If you did sue them, and many people have, this is how I know this stuff, if you did sue, let's say you sued the city of LA for not protecting you because you were mugged, what would a battery of attorneys, that's a scary thought, what would a battery of attorneys file in response to your complaint? They file a demur here in California, and they would say, you failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. You have no cause of action because you did not state a case. I know, you're frowning. You're looking like... Did anywhere in your education about American government did they teach you what a case was? They get back. The government has no duty to protect you, and they've told us that. There are many, many Supreme Court cases. Anyone here ever go to law school? It's okay, we're all among friends. No one? No one? Oh, wow, okay. Well, the thing is, when you go through law school, and I guess Butler isn't here yet, when you go through law school, there's a certain cases you go through where you understand and you get black letter law, as they call it, it's unambiguous, where the Supreme Court of the United States in DeShaney versus County of Winnebago, which is one of many, many cases, that the government is under absolutely no duty to protect anybody. So if you look in the government code here in California, I think it's section 945, but don't quote me on that. It is in the government code that you cannot hold the government responsible for failing to provide police protection. Nice, huh? Yeah, really. So that's why I put in my videos that when and I overlay that, Salazar versus City of Antioch is where the California Court of Appeals, which the Supreme Court did not review because it didn't disagree with it, where the Court of Appeals stated, this is a direct quote, police officers have no statutory duty to do anything. Wow. Maybe the Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme and whatnot, they have a duty to keep them in business, but they have no duty to do anything, they said, so that includes protection. So that's why in my videos what I'll do is as kind of a repeating motif, I will overlay that with the video, on the video of the police officers pinning down a suspected gang member and beating the living crap out of him. They have no duty to protect anybody, so what are they doing beating the heck out of this guy? So they tell us legally, and we know that the fact that taxes are compulsory, no duty to protect us could be created. So what does that mean? What are the implications of that? This hit me years ago, because I had gotten into all this stuff about citizens. Well, citizens are a member of the body politic, duty of allegiance in return for protection. But there's no duty to protect anybody. What does that mean about allegiance? Does anybody owe allegiance? No! So if you don't have a duty of allegiance, you don't have a duty of protection, are there any citizens? No!
Yes.
Back! We've got a challenge right here we'll do after the talk. If you can prove that there are citizens, Paul's going to lose some money. Now, there's no empirical evidence, right? Right? Do you? Oh, who said? Oh.
The 14th Amendment.
What about?
It says about citizens of the United States. The 14th Amendment.
Okay, and that's in the Constitution, right? And the Constitution is what?
It's a agreement among.
No, that's an opinion. Tell me what it is factually.
Constitution. It's a document.
Thank you. That's the answer. Did anyone sign it? Did anyone sign it in any manner as a signatory or to make themselves responsible to it as an agreement?
No.
No. So it's just a piece of paper. They said, if you read it, it says what? In witness thereof. Nobody signed it in any manner that it could be binding as an agreement. As Lysander Spooner wrote in Constitution, no authority, no treason. The Constitution has no inherent authority. If it has any authority at all, it's as a contract, and it doesn't even purport to be a contract. And even if we accepted it, I'm going to paraphrase a little now. Even if we accepted it as a contract, which no court in the country, so-called, would ever enforce the contract, the Constitution as a contract. If you did accept it as a contract, it only applied to anybody who agreed to it then, in 1787. We'll just say, well, they signed it. We'll just assume they signed it to make themselves responsible. So only the people who actually signed it could be held responsible to its terms. They're all dead. And like Lysander Spooner said, if someone says, I am building this hotel for me and my posterity. That doesn't mean your kids have to live in it. The old man's crazy. I don't want to live in L.A. I'd rather live in Big Bear. So the Constitution doesn't help because there's no connection. It's just a piece of paper. I mean, I've gone into court and I've gone into depositions. I've done it on the phone. And I have a certified copy of the Constitution, and I lay it out, and what is it? Yeah. It's the supreme law of the land. It's what it says. What is it, though? And then you tell them, well, it's 4 pieces of paper. Well, yeah. Okay. I have in the book of Richard Kennedy, who's an IRS district counsel, said to me, you want me to say the Constitution's a piece of paper. Well, that's stupid. Well, I think whether it's true or not is what's relevant. It may be stupid, but is it true or not? So what's really stupid is you think 4 pieces of paper from 230 some odd years ago gives you and your client a right to my client's house. Now that's stupid, because if I said this piece of paper gave me a right to your house, you'd rightly, tell me where to go. You seem to think that these 4 pieces of paper in Washington, D.C. that no one gets to even look at or touch, you seem to think that gives you a right to my house. Raving nonsense. So we show that we can show empirically that there are no citizens. So if there are no citizens, is there a body politic? No. Seth, you know this stuff. Just especially when someone like Seth isn't saying anything, okay. So if we don't have a body politic, is there a state? No. Well, if you have no states, is there a United States? No. Here's a tough one. If you don't have a state, and you don't have citizens, is there a government? No. So what do you have? Individuals. Guys with guns. This is why I define government, and we can prove this. Nothing more than a group of men and women providing a service on a compulsory basis. And a service that they don't even have to provide, right? So, what? I'm sorry? Well, people will go through and say, well, what about the roads? So how many people you were willing to personally shoot to build a road? I'm glad to hear that. Is there anybody here who is willing to shoot somebody or take their house by force in order to build a road? How about a library? Okay, hey, I'll get a tough one for Professor Beto. How about to build a university?
University or a football stadium.
Well, and that too. You know, that's why I laugh when you hear these neocon or these. I'm sorry? Oh, no shooting. Unless they are initiating the force first. That's why I laugh when I hear these talking heads, these conservative Republicans saying, well, that's socialism and you can't have socialism. Really? Do you watch college football? And then you got guys like Sean Hannity that love the military. Support the troops. That's socialism. That is taking property from one group of people and giving it to another. So if you've got a problem with government health care, you should have a problem with college football. We're getting through. Well, thank you. So we see that the concept of a state is absolutely false, empirically false. We can prove this. We can actually prove this. But when you talk to people, and you start talking about libertarianism, you start talking about agorism or anarchy or voluntarism, you start getting these emotional responses. I've actually had people argue with me when I tell them taxes are compulsory. I deal with a lot of people, you know, doing a radio show, and by a lot I mean like 12. Yes. Hey, we're going to like triple the size of the audience this afternoon, which is cool. But yet you get these responses. Why is it you can undermine the entire concept of a state and people will still fight you and defend it? Does anyone have any idea why?
The human mind is easily controlled.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome. And we've updated that to the battered citizen syndrome. You get the crap beaten out of you, but we got to pay for the roads. You don't understand him. He's kicking the crap out of you. You have to leave him. But you don't understand. He builds the roads. Right? You just don't understand. I'm sorry?
How do you use the battered citizen syndrome when you don't believe that they're citizens?
It's just a phrase. It's to describe somebody who's still caught up in that mindset. He just can't let go. Because one of the... I'm sorry, you have a question?
Well, I was going to submit that it's really the tribal imperative.
The tribal imperative? That explains it too.
They feel very uncomfortable having the tribe diminished.
Yes, there is an artist, I don't remember who did it. It's a very simple drawing, and it says it all. And I mentioned this in Nashua a couple years ago, and it kind of sums up what I think is the human tragedy. And imagine you got a cartoon, and you know, with the thought, you get that bubble. Okay, so we're all thinking the same thing, and it's like, what a bunch of clueless sheep. And it sums it up. Because I think deep down, people know government's the problem. We know government's the problem. But we don't know how everyone else is going to respond to that. We don't know how you're going to react to that. We don't know if you believe that. So the tragedy is We all know that government has to be abolished as soon as society is ready for it, but we don't stand up and do anything about it because we don't think you believe it, or you or anyone. You imagine that we all want it abolished as soon as possible, but we're not brave enough or confident enough to stand up and do what's right. That's a tragedy. Especially when you've got the internet and you've got instant communication to get this stuff out there. Where some schmuck from Long Island can sit in his home studio and reach people in Australia. Okay, so there's really no excuse. But that is taking apart the concept of a state. Now, it's helped and been very, very effective in court, and I use this on a regular basis. And I'm not saying that you have to know law inside and out. You don't. One of the easiest ways to deconstruct this and show that they don't have a case against you, because they never do, I'll explain what a case is in a moment, is just to ask them point blank very simple questions. Take what they give you, like they say you're a citizen, you ask them questions about that. Well, factually, what is a citizen? You don't have to know anything about taxes, do you? You can ask them, is there a factual difference between income and taxable income? Well, no, Norm, stop. They will say, yeah. What are they? Even better, you just ask him if he knows what they are. Well, do you know what the factual differences are, sir? And you could go on the website, markstevens.net, and you can hear phone calls with the Franchise Tax Board admitting they don't know. I don't know what they are either, but the point is there is no such thing as taxable income. But what better thing to have on your behalf than the agents who say you owe taxes admitting they're not qualified to say that? And Norm, you've been listening long and said you've heard the phone calls where I've had them. I said, well, he's like, look, I'm not an attorney. Just you know, let me know what the process is. Don't worry about the law. Doesn't matter. You ask them what the process is. Get it from their mouth. So Daniel was one of them in Sacramento. What's the process? What are the grounds to vacate an assessment? I don't need to know the stupid revenue and taxation code. I'm going to ask Daniel about it, right? So he tells me, oh, if we're convinced that there's no evidence, we'll vacate the assessment. Great. Excellent. Is there a factual difference between income and taxable income? Oh, yeah. Do you know what they are? You've heard the video, right? There doesn't have to be evidence. Apparently not. Apparently not. That's why the Roman generals, I forget their name, I think it was Pompey, one of them, he had mentioned, don't call law to us, we carry swords. Cicero was also famous for saying something very similar to that. You don't quote laws to men who carry swords. What's wrong with you? But this is a nonviolent way of approaching it, not being argumentative and getting it thrown out. But it's not just about getting these tickets and everything thrown out. It's about bringing about a voluntary society, which is what the show is about. The show is called the No State Project. And it's not necessarily to get to a stateless society, because we are already there. There are no states. What did John Lennon say? The world is run by the insane for insane purposes? You got that right. Anybody who will do business at the barrel of a gun is insane. They're psychopaths. Now, I don't have all the time to get into a lot of the psychological stuff, but I want to get into how we keep talking about a revolution. And I'm going to borrow the phrase. I know Ian from Free Talk Live doesn't take credit for this. He doesn't know who coined this. But it's not a revolution we're looking for. We're looking for an evolution. That we as humans need to evolve and not be parasites or support parasites. To actually grow up and be men. Women, I mean that in both terms.